The axle snapped at nightfall, halfway over the high pass, with the cold rolling in and one lantern of oil left.
By the end of this, you'll know why the best crisis teams don't look for a hero, and how 4 men, 200,000 miles from home, proved it with a sock and a roll of tape. At first, everyone did everything. Kai hammered at the axle. Milo started 3 plans at once. Noah tried to calm them both and reached neither. 3 capable people, all doing everything, which meant nobody was doing the one thing. Night came down, and the lantern burned lower. And the strange truth is, the way out of that night had been discovered in April 1970, 200,000 miles above the nearest road. Apollo 13 was 55 hours into a smooth flight to the moon when a routine flick of a switch, a stir of an oxygen tank, short-circuited and blew out the side of the spacecraft.
Houston, we've had a problem.
In Mission Control, Gene Kranz's team didn't panic because nobody in that room was responsible for everything. Every console owned exactly one job: power, engines, trajectory, the crew's air. The room worked because the room was already divided. The plan: abandon the dying command module and crowd into the lunar lander. A lifeboat built to keep 2 men alive for 45 hours, now asked to keep 3 alive for 90. Then the air itself began to fail, carbon dioxide climbing toward the line. The fix didn't come from rank. Engineer Ed Smiley's crew systems team built an adapter out of a flight manual cover, a spacesuit hose, a sock, a plastic bag, and duct tape, and read the crew the instructions line by line over the radio. It worked. The gauge came down. The rescue of the decade, held together with tape. To make the power last, they shut the command module down to nothing, something never done in flight, and let the cold in. The cabin fell to a few degrees above freezing. Water beaded and froze on the walls. And Jim Lovell's quiet job became keeping 3 exhausted men steady enough to fly. Meanwhile, Ken Mattingly, the crewmate pulled off this very flight days earlier over a measles scare, sat in a dark simulator with flight controller John Aaron, inventing a way to bring a dead spacecraft back to life on almost no current. It had never been done. They rewrote it until it fit. And notice the strange part. This crew had been rebuilt days before launch. If great teams run on years of shared history, the shared map from our Star Team story, this team should have broken. It didn't. Because underneath familiarity, there's a second layer, one that holds even between strangers. Everyone in that operation knew exactly which problem was theirs. The people changed. The roles didn't. Even the famous line gets this wrong. Nobody in Houston ever said failure is not an option. Screenwriters wrote that decades later. What flight controller Jerry Bostic actually described is quieter and better. The strength hack calls these the 4 crisis roles. Navigators choose the path. Analysts lay out the options without drama. Problem solvers build what doesn't exist yet. And stabilizers keep the humans working while all of it happens. 19 years later, the same lesson had to be learned all over again at 37,000 feet over Iowa. A tail engine on United Flight 232 exploded, and the shrapnel severed all 3 hydraulic systems. The plane could no longer be steered at all. Engineers had rated that failure so unlikely, there was no procedure for it at all. The odds? Less than 1 in a billion. Captain Al Haynes did what Houston had done. He divided the impossible. When an off-duty instructor pilot named Denny Fitch offered to help, Haynes didn't guard his rank. He handed Fitch the throttles, the only control left, and let each man own one piece of the problem. They flew an unflyable plane for 44 minutes and reached a runway. Of the 296 people aboard, 184 survived, a crash the industry had called unsurvivable. None of that was luck. 11 years earlier, a jet had crashed outside Portland, while its captain fixated on one broken indicator light, and the fuel quietly ran out. A crew too polite to claim their roles. Out of that came crew resource management. Every airline crew on Earth now trains who does what and the duty to speak up before they ever meet a real emergency.
We had 103 years of flying experience in that cockpit, and not 1 minute of practice at that failure.
Which brings us back to a frozen pass, a broken axle, and 3 friends with no checklist for any of it. What changed their night wasn't effort. They had plenty. It was one sentence from Milo. Stop fixing everything. Everyone, pick one post.
Noah took the humans, her empathy and harmony at work, the stabilizers post. Warmth, water, one voice at a time, until 3 scattered people were a crew again.
Milo took the path, his strategic mind laying the 3 ways down the mountain out like cards on a table, Bostic calm, and choosing the long, shallow road a wounded wagon could survive.
And Kai took the broken thing, activator drive, restorative hands. He splinted the axle with a lantern pole and a cargo strap, NASA ugly and holding. But first, maybe for the first time, he looked up and asked, Milo, which way?
They came down off the pass at first light, one lantern still burning, toward the valley lights below. Not because anyone had been a hero that night, but because each of them had been exactly one.
That's the one thing Apollo 13 and a cornfield in Iowa agree on. Heroes improvise. Teams assign.
And you can hand out the 4 hats before your next crisis ever starts. In the first minutes, say it out loud. Who's navigating? Who's laying out the options? Who's building the fix? Who's watching the humans? 4 sentences, and a room full of talent becomes a crew. To see which of the 4 roles your team already covers and which post is standing empty, take the free team check at strengthhack.com/safeteams.